get by. It resides between my eyes. Walk through the fire, came out better on the other side. See, life's like a beach if you find the sand. And right now, I feel like 100 grand.
You are listening to Inspired Insider with your host, Dr. Jeremy Wise.
Dr. Jeremy Weiss here, founder of InspiredInsider.com, where I talk with inspirational entrepreneurs and leaders. Today is no different. I'm here with Antonio and Carlos of the Condor agency, and I'm going to formally introduce both of you in a second, but I always like to mention other episodes people should check out of the podcast. One of the reasons we met was through Jason Swank. So shout out to Jason Swank. I have 2 episodes with him. One, how he built his company to over 8 figures, and the other of what they're doing and how they're evaluating agencies, because they're acquiring agencies as well. So check that episode out. I did an episode with Ian Garlic, and he talks, he has videocasestory.com where he helps collect customer case stories from companies. And he talks about some of the marketing advice he learned from his dad. They had live dolphins in a restaurant, and it wasn't in Orlando, it was in Wisconsin. So listen to some of the things that he walks through in that episode and many, many others on InspiredInsider.com. This episode is brought to you by Rise 25. And at Rise 25, we help businesses give to and connect to your dream 100 relationships. And how do we do that? We actually are an easy button to help you launch and run your podcast. We do accountability, strategy, and execution of your podcast. And there's a great episode on the 5 different types of episodes every podcast should create. You can check that out. But for me, Antonio, Carlos, we know each other a little bit. The number one thing in my life is relationships, and I'm always looking at ways to give to my best relationships. And I found no better way to do that than to profile the people and companies I most admire and let everyone know what they're working on. So if you've thought about podcasting, you should. If you have questions, just go to rise25.com to learn more. And without further ado, we have Antonio Santana and Carlos Corredor. They're from Venezuela, and they're co-founders of the Condor agency, and they've been working together for over a decade, and they help make U.S. companies more competitive. How do they do that? By helping you leverage the best talent in Latin America, okay? They've grown the company to over 70 people, and they recruit people directly for clients, but they also serve as a digital marketing agency with managed services as well. So thank you both for joining me.
Hey, Jeremy, thanks for having us.
So
Thanks.
Let's start off with a little bit about Condor agency and what you do.
Yeah, well, I think you summarized it pretty well. Full service digital marketing. So, the usual channels, website the design and development, SEO, paid media, in particular, since we're focused on B2B, that's heavy on Google Ads and LinkedIn, but also some Facebook, Instagram, and the other ones. Email marketing and marketing automation is a big one. And also we're heavy on analytics, web analytics, and reporting. And more recently, especially after COVID, like you mentioned, also simply recruiting talent directly to our US clients. So they can, if they know what they want to do, they can just hire somebody directly and have those cost savings by working with our Latin American folks.
With the agency, a lot of times people start off doing one thing and things evolve. When you first started the agency, what was the service that you started with, or the services?
It was managed services. The reason why we started is before the agency, and like you mentioned, more than 10 years ago, we had our own projects. We were essentially the owners. We were on the owner's use, or on the client side, right? So, the agencies that we work with, they would take forever. They were really expensive. They didn't really understand what we needed or the business. And then, living in Chicago and seeing the service that U.S. agencies were giving to let's say medium-sized companies or growing companies that were not enterprise or Fortune 1000 yet, we saw that opportunity. So we started Condor, leveraging Latin American talent and passing on those cost saves via managed service across those channels. And then, especially, after COVID, that people felt more comfortable working remotely, we started growing the recruiting and staffing side of things.
And typically, I mean, with the managed services, we've been working with B2B companies, typically in consulting, finance, IT, because they have, marketing team, but they want to maybe handle things with an agency. But in the recruiting and staffing side services, it's more oriented to digital marketing agencies because they typically have the know-how. They just want people and they want to leverage this talent with Latin American people. Of course, it's going to be more affordable, but it's not going to be that you sacrifice quality because, you will have better skill or maybe with more years of experience. And even with those qualities, you will still save like 50% cost. So that's, digital marketing agencies are typically our target audience in the recruiting services.
I want to ask a little bit. We'll get into it because I want to hear your thoughts on recruiting, the recruiting process, the hiring process. But Carl, start with you. You worked in agencies for probably over 5 years before you even started your own. So you have a lot of experience there. What were some of the lessons you took from the previous agencies that you worked at that you brought to Condor?
Mm-hmm. Well, I think there are a few. One is that U.S. agencies, I mentioned, they're really built to serve Fortune 1000 clients. What I mean by that is that they charge, $200 an hour or more. All of their teams and their structure and their day-to-day, if it's a $30,000 project, it's small for them, right? Obviously, when you pay $100,000 a year in salaries for a either a senior analyst or a junior manager, that's what you have to charge to make it profitable. So that's coming from Venezuela, and being from Latin America in Venezuela, where salaries, especially at a time of crisis when I left, were so much lower. I was a little shocked by how expensive some of these agencies were and how little attention they paid to clients that were not Fortune 1000, right? So that's one thing. But on the other one, obviously, the US and the economy, they moved fast. They move fast. They do a great job. They do help clients with strategy and add value, to the right clients, right? So that's something that we have tried to put on our DNA in Condor because, in the rest of the world, people, let's say, move a little slower, right? So that's a learning, we cannot sacrifice that, we definitely need to be, playing the same league with these agents in terms of the quality of the service, the speed of response, and really how everyone moves here in let's say corporate America or in the competitive side of the U.S. economy. I'm sure there are more, but those would be the two ones that come to mind.
Yeah, you saw the opportunity because there were certain clients they were serving and there were certain clients they weren't serving. Antonio, what about you? Before you met in your previous business, what lessons did you learn there?
I think we understood a lot how to identify talent. Because, we've been working for the past 15 years, and initially it was complicated to have like identify talent, interview them, how to find them where they are. And our first years were very rough in terms of talent, retention, how to be a leader for them. And it was like school during those projects, and we started to develop like a solid system to identify this talent. and we started to grow from there. And once we decided to, that we wanted to build our own agency, we already had years of experience, like recruiting, having a team, consolidating relationships between the team. And I would say that like those years were key for the years that we have had the agency, because it was not like starting from scratch. It was like you were already having experience in consolidated teams. And when COVID happened, and we identified that companies in the US understood that working from home was a reality. We already had like a solid recruiting system to jump into this new line of service. So I would say that was really important in the previous years.
What are some things you do that's important to identify talent? And then we can go into the recruiting process a little bit. But when you see a candidate, because you are constantly recruiting, and what do? What's something that you look at to identify talent that other companies should look at as well?
We have like a scoring system, and like, for example, we care much for English. Of course, English is really important. In the scoring system, we have what we call the Condor values. So it's essentially soft skills, but oriented to our values. And we, in the algorithm or the formula, we give the most value to our Condor values, because we believe in soft skills. We believe that people that are hungry and they want to grow fast, it's the most important. For example, one of our values is winning mentality, and it's oriented because we always like sports, and we played sports, and it's you can do the analogy between the sports and how they reach to become the greatest of all time, and it was related to hard work, to learning from failures and things like that. And in our tests, we try to identify as much if they have that grit, if they are hungry for doing more, or if they just want to enter in a company for the payroll, or like, I don't know, working from 9 to 6. Those type of talent, we don't like it. We like the people with hungry and they feel excited or challenged to work with companies in the US. So I would say that's really important for us. I don't know, Carlos, if you...
So you look for, obviously you want someone English speaking so they can work with someone in the US. Yeah. They soft skills, winning mentality, grit, hunger. They like the challenges based on values. What else do you look for that's in the scoring system?
Well, in the scoring systems, of course, there's the technical part. We have a lot of tests. For example, if they are applying for a paid media position, we have our own paid media test based on what we do with the clients. We have all the tests basically on the daily basis, because we're doing a lot of paid media tests, paid media work for a client, and we typically send the same things to the candidate to see if they are up to the work we're doing with the clients.
Yeah, and the other factor, just to finalize discussion about the formula and the scoring system, is salary expectation. Obviously, if you're willing to double people's salary, yeah, you can get anyone. Yeah, if you're gonna pay $100 million a year for a baseball player, you're gonna get anyone, right? The challenge is, not overpaying, right? So that's also a factor in the formula. And I would say, when hiring outside of the US, independent if it's Latin America, Asia, Europe, wherever, one thing to keep in mind is that the rest of the world doesn't move as fast as the US, especially in the professional environment. So you definitely need to filter out people that have a mentality of, let's say, more of a socialist countries where they work less and the rhythm is much slower, and it's like this cynicism against your employer and this resentment against your employer, right? You need to definitely weed those people out, because they will be no good for your company, even if they have the technical skills, or they're, it's not like they're dumb. They know how to talk their way around an interview and emphasize on their hard skills, but you really need to listen and find who those people are, because they are not, if they don't truly believe in being competitive and being coachable, and having that winning mentality, and really being eager to be part of the US, of those competitive US companies, if that's not really their dream already, then it's going to be tough, right? So I would say that's a big one.
You mentioned a good point about talking, people can show up and look good on the surface.
Yeah.
And so what is maybe a test or an interview question that you use to evaluate the soft skills? What would be an example?
Yeah, I mean, for example, our recruiting test, it's long because you need to pass all the steps to, because in each of the steps, maybe you can show I don't know what you're saying. Like maybe we identify that not everything that he was saying or she was true. No? And I mean, for example, we have there's a book from Carol Dweck. It's about identifying growth mindset. So we have a test to ask a lot of questions for them, and it's tricky. And then once they pass the test, you see if that person it's more oriented to growth or it's more oriented to have a fixed mindset. Also, when they at the end of the recruiting process, we try to bring as much of leadership team as possible. We call the panel interview, and that's more straightforward interviewing, and we try to give them like situations where they work. They need to, I don't know, send some deliverables late because the client is expecting them, and we put them like in difficult and hard situations to see how they respond. And I think it's very useful because when you see the faces, sometimes maybe they get uncomfortable and things like that. So we try to one of our values also, it's radical transparency. So we are very candid when we talk to the candidates that are applying for a job, especially during the panel interview. And I will say that's a great filter. It's easy, but the candidates tend to be more honest during those interviews.
Yeah, so you put them in kind of you give them situational questions to see how they react in tough situations, and they'll walk you through how they do that. Carol, go ahead.
And we also have it's like a questionnaire or something that it's that we design, and it's questions that we build for each of our values, and those are like situations, real life situations that if you answer this or that, it will give you a score if you are better or not in our particular set of values.
Yep. So we talked about a couple of the pieces, right? The panel interview, the technical test, the questionnaire. Just walk me through a little bit from start to finish about like the recruiting process. Where does it start, and then what happens next?
Okay. First, I want to start with our team. We have a 10+ team, and we divide it between sourcers. The sourcers are the ones that are very active on LinkedIn, contacting people. And it's usually, I mean, you need to contact, I don't know, let's say 1,000 people to get 100 applicants, because as you know, people on LinkedIn, they don't tend to answer. So, and those are the sourcers, and they also do screening initially. And if they feel this is a good candidate during the screening process, and if the people are open to hear our proposal, they become applicants, and we set an interview for them. And now the interviewing part of the team appears. So we have interviewers.
Do they fill anything out before the interview, or
come again?
do they fill anything out before the interview typically?
The candidates or our team?
The candidates.
Yeah, I mean, we send like a form that's screening part. It's a part of the screening process, and they fill it, that form. Those are typical questions like maybe salary expectancy. I don't know. Maybe if they want, they could go to the office in person, things like that. And then it comes to the interviewing process, and we have people that are actively interviewing all the time. We have around 100 to 150 interviews a month. And they apply the scoring system there. They give a scoring for that interview, and if they pass the interview, like having a score of 3 or more, they become qualified and they pass to the next step. And if they are 3.5 or more, it's a premium candidate.
Score of 0 to 5, just like the Yelp star system, or the universal star system.
And then we send the test. There's a bunch of them, and typically some of them decline then during the process because they feel it's hard. Like, I mean, this is a lot of tests. So I think it's a good filter, because we need people that are really interested in joining Condor. So maybe other recruiting teams will say, I don't know, I think this is too much. We need to keep it easy. Yeah, it's true. But also you need to like identify that they are really interested in joining Condor. And if they pass the test, there's a score for there, and you are basically calculating both the scoring system during the interview and the test. And then if they pass the test also, they go to the panel interview. And in the panel interview, there's also a score there. And if they still are over 3, they become qualified. And that's basically it. And at the end, you take a decision, and you offer to a candidate, basically. I don't know if there's something missing there.
Yeah, no, I would say depending on the situation, on the urgency of filling the position, like what our most important metric, and we measure across that funnel, we measure everything, but I think qualified candidates, and we're putting more and more emphasis on the premium candidates, right? Because it's not, it's not, a lot of times, it's not enough just to be qualified. We really want candidates to wow us, and having like the holy grail that we want is 5 premium candidates per position, which usually means 10 or 15 qualified ones. And then, you can afford the luxury of selecting amongst 5 really great options. But no, I think that, I mean, needless to say, it's a lot of work to make a good hire. Now you do the math backwards, and that's okay. Let's say 2-3 premium candidates, 8 qualified candidates, 12 or 15 panel interviews, 30 HR interviews, 100 applicants, hundreds of messages that you need to send. And obviously, we optimize each part of the funnel, throughout time. This is the process today in, January 2023, but believe me, it was not like this,
Yeah.
in 2020 or in 2017.
No, and talking about the metrics, it's you need around like 1,000 entries into the database to have 100 applicants, to then have 50 to have 80 interviews, because during the applicant they sometimes they
drop out.
Yeah, they drop out, and then to have 80 interviews, 40 qualified candidates, and 35% of those qualified candidates needs to be premium, because as Carlos was saying, you need competition during the process. It's a matter of that for us, that we are deciding that it's complicated also, that you have competition. Maybe I am deciding between 2 great or 3 great people, and I need to decide. And then you get, I don't know, a couple of hires maybe, or even one. So
yeah, but I would say, let's say, I don't know, 3 years ago, it would take us, 2 months to find one qualified candidate. So obviously, you were desperate, and we would hire that person. Yeah, it's qualified. We need them. Let's hire. Now, it takes us 2 weeks to get 5 qualified candidates and 2 premiums. So if we have an urgency, we hire one of the 2 premiums there. If not, then we wait another 2 weeks to have 5 premiums and, I don't know, 13, 14, 15 qualified, right?
And another thing that it's really good about our system is that, during the process, we found amazing candidates, but maybe you need to decide only one. But the other ones, we call it ready candidates, and they are still in our database, and we keep good relationships with them. We also have a form that the candidates fill during our recruiting process to have a score on our own, like a client satisfaction score. And our relationships with the candidates really good. And sometimes happens that this is a candidate that maybe they weren't hired during this process, but maybe in a second one or in a third one, they become the hires. So it's something that it's really helpful for us, because we have a solid database.
What type of talent are you hiring for? Typically, what are companies looking for?
It's marketing. We focus on marketing positions, and then there's really no other boundaries other than that. From account managers, paid media analysts, project managers, email, SEO, designers, web developers would fall in that category, although it's somewhat of its own category. But those, marketing positions in general.
What's the expectation from a US-based company that they should expect? And it probably depends on position, but like a range of from a salary perspective.
We say rule of thumb is a third. Equal skills, equal years of experience, and as you mentioned, right? Some, for example, developers, because people, they were expensive since forever. It's one that is a little more common to outsource, so the rest of the world is a little more caught up. And that one, maybe, you don't necessarily get to a third, or you could, if you know how and when to look at it and you have patience. But I would say roughly a third, is the difference in salaries.
But like adding all the costs, like for example, our fees and maybe legal things, taxes, whatever, it will be like a 50% cost savings.
And that's also one thing to note, is that in the US, the pay gaps, the pay bands are, let's say, somewhat tight, meaning like maybe, let's say a senior email marketing person according to Glassdoor and that, makes between, let's say, $75,000 and $100,000 a year, right? That's a difference of 25%. In Latin America, you find bands of 50, 60, 30%, right? It depends on so many things. So that's why it's important also to start. We'll give our client a range of what we think we can find in a reasonable amount of time. We don't want to make the client wait too long. So, but we also ask for a budget number or for a target number from them, right? And also if the true urgency of filling the position, because again, if you can afford to wait, a couple more weeks, then we might find you. Or you can also get creative, right? You might need, especially if it's somebody that's starting that you want to train yourself. Let's say it's a marketing analyst, right? Yeah, ideally that person would have, let's say, 3 years using Salesforce and HubSpot and MailChimp, etc. But maybe we've had a really great candidate with really great personality and grit and potential with only 1 year of experience in, I don't know, SEO, but that it's really passionate about moving to email marketing, right? And you can find that person half of the price. So we'll have those conversations with our clients, because again, it's not, the math is not as predictable as in the US. There's definitely creative ways to decrease costs even further.
There was an agency you worked with in California. I'd like to walk through what you did with them, because they, I think you said they needed over 10 people.
Yeah.
What'd you do with them?
I mean, I would say that's our biggest success story as with the recruiting service. Actually, this was an agency that they were familiar with outsourcing talent because they had a lot of people in the Philippines. But they were struggling with time zone, and also they mentioned similar culture with the cultural similarities with the Philippines were not that what they wanted to. So they came to us and they started with only one position. I was guessing that they wanted to identify we were good bringing talent for them. We started with an account manager position, and it was let's say a 2 or 3 week period, and they felt really great with the process, and they hired this account manager. And later they say, we want to bring into the team 11 to 12 people between account managers and paid media managers or media buyers. But we want them really fast. We have a lot of projects going on, and we needed a team in Mexico. They open operations in Mexico too. I think that maybe they weren't as happy with the Philippines, so they decided to outsource in Mexico, and they opened a company. They were incorporated in Mexico, but they don't have a solid recruiting internal team. So we started to find these positions for this agency. We thought it was going to be complicated. They wanted basically the 10 or 12 people in a month. And we were expecting to bring those people in maybe 2 to 3 months. But at the end, basically all the team jumped into that client. It was at the end of the year. December, it's a complicated season because, the candidates, they are not usually looking for new opportunities. They are maybe expecting their bonuses. They are in Christmas mode, and it was going to be harder. But at the end, we feel basically those the 11 positions for them. And actually, in January, they said that they want to bring 3 or 4 more people, and they want to have a team of 40 to 50 people in Mexico by the end of the year. So I would say that's one of our biggest success cases.
I want to talk about, thanks for walking through that. How do
Thanks.
you navigate competing against yourself? So a company wants your services, like, I want SEO services. Then they're like, well, maybe we could can you just hire us a team of SEO people to do it? But they could also hire you to do it. So what do you find the difference between someone comes in and say, listen, I just want you to do my SEO versus, you know what, you can hire us 5 people and we can have those 5 people for our company?
Mm-hmm. I think a big factor is, do you have the expertise to do it? From not to execute it, but from a supervision perspective, do you know even how to supervise? Do you know what you want to get out of it, right? Do you know how to do it, right? And do you have the time to do it? If both of those are yeses, then I think recruiting makes sense. If not, then basically giving you a team that is ready to perform, that which hours of work are channeled via an account manager and a single point of contact that is dedicated to you, and saves you time managing and project managing everything, then it makes more sense that way, right? What has this turned into? As we kind of said at the beginning, other marketing and digital marketing agencies, they usually know what they're doing, right? Otherwise, they wouldn't be in business. So maybe if it's a channel that is not in their, let's say, in their core offerings, right? If it's I don't know, if it's a creative agency and somebody requests to do something more technical, maybe then it makes sense to do some like white labeling work or bring us as an agency and do it. But for the most part, agencies have become specialized and they're focusing on what they're good at, and they just want somebody they can train in their own process, right? So again, recruiting and staffing makes a lot of sense for other agencies and companies that have already a couple people in their marketing team. Maybe they have hired a couple of US agencies and realized how expensive they were and how slow they were and how little attention they paid them. And then, okay, you know what, let's hire somebody internal for that. But then, they pay $100K a year, for a person that's not so senior and they have to manage all day. And that's like the ideal client for us because, that's how we're built to serve on the managed services, right? A team that's plug and play and saves you time, know what they're doing. It measures themselves, obviously with a transparent measurement system on how many leads are generating. And that's usually, those B2B marketing teams that are trying to grow but are not sure how. That's when the managed services makes more sense. Also, when you have demands across channel, because a lot of times you don't need only one channel or a full-time, equivalent work for one person, but you need a little SEO, a little web design, a little paid media, a little bit of everything, right? So it's like, great, these guys can do it for you, and you can have on-demand access to experts across marketing channels.
Yeah, I think you bring up some good points there because, companies, it's important to hire an agency in certain respects. And I think companies underestimate sometimes the expertise, the project management, the supervision, the time management it takes to coordinate all of it. Even if you bring on someone who knows what they're doing, you kind of need to have like a cohesive strategy, and you have to have management and project, all of that stuff in place, to make everything run smoothly. So in which case an agency would be a good fit. First of all, thank you both. Thanks for walking me through, everyone that I've talked to and had on the show is constantly looking for talent. And so I love how you walk through your process. I have one last question before I ask it. I just want to point people to check out Condor Agency. .com and learn more. Check out more episodes of the podcast as well. My last question for each of you is, Antonio, you mentioned the Carol Dweck book, and I'm just wondering from each of you, any other resources, whether it's books, audiobooks, physical books, or resources, websites that you look at that that you consider valuable for you?
Yeah, I mean, I really love to read, and specifically this type of books. And we try to bring this culture also to the agency, and we are always proposing new books to our employees. And for example, in my case, I love what Daniel Pink it's doing. Drive, it's a book that I think it's amazing and gives you a lot of recommendations for being a good leader. Also When from Daniel Pink, because it's maybe helps you how to in times of the time internally, when to put the meetings and things like that. Internally, one of our most important books, it's Principles from Ray Dalio. It's actually in the radical transparency value. We use it a lot, and in general. What else? But yeah, I mean, those are recommendations that I give you in the top of mind.
Yeah, Ray Dalio. I'm a huge fan of Ray Dalio, of the book. The book is dense and long, so there you have a lot of things to think about and digest. He also has. He launched it somewhat recently. It's a test. It's a personality test that we also use. That it's a little more, let's say, practical than the traditional Brigg-Myers test. So that's, I think, a resource that I believe is still free for companies to use. He also has a paid version for companies, that you might want to look into. We had already built something similar internally, so we're not using that version, but we definitely consume and follow Ray Dalio's advice from a professional perspective, even like me, from a personal perspective. I'm a huge fan. For example, just something as as personal as meditating or not. I was not a believer by any means until a few years ago that I heard him saying how much it helped him. So somebody that I respect and admire, I started, giving it a shot, for example, so that's definitely someone that we follow. I think those are the main ones.
Yeah. Well, first of all, thank you. Everyone check out CondorAgency.com, and thanks everyone.
What I got, you can't buy. It resides between my eyes. Walked through the fire, came out better on the other side. See, life's like a beach if you find the sailing right now. I'm feeling like $100 grand.